shocking reports out today show that thanks to soaring immigration, Britain is more divided than ever before. And by 2035, the trend is going to explode. The first set of data, seen exclusively by GB News, shows that by 2035, 25% of the entire British population will be foreign-born. But that rises to 1/3 if you include their children. A third of the entire population will be born overseas or with their direct offspring. And a second damning report also out today, the analysis of census data, shows that almost 1 million now speak little or no English in the United Kingdom, and in some parts of Leicester, it's an astonishing 43% of people don't speak any or little English at all. Now, with this in mind, today we're asking the sobering question: is mass immigration changing Britain to the point where integration is now nigh on impossible? And what, if anything, can be done about it? Well, to get our teeth into this one, I'm speaking now with GB News' political editor Chris Hope and the former Conservative MP and Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Tom, I'm going to start with you first, your field of expertise. These figures are simply incredible. A third of the entire nation in just 10 years' time born overseas or the direct children of them. And I think we've got some figures we can put on the screen now to show the country of origin. This is from the Centre for Migration Control. We can see there on the screen at the top, we have 3.2 million Indians. We have next 1.5 million Nigerians, 1.26 million Chinese. We have 1.15 million Pakistanis, 607,000 Polish, 500,000 Bangladeshis, and then we have 400,000 Americans, 400,000 South Africans, and 360,000 Germans. And by the way, the latter of those three are typically high-earning, high-tax-paying, beneficial types of immigrants. Therefore, this is not about, immigration being a good thing or a bad thing per se. It's about numbers, it's about the volume, and it's about Britain being forever changed. What do you make of such astonishing data?
Well, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. These are unsustainable numbers. This just can't continue to be the case. And frankly, the big concern that I have is, A, around the sort of infrastructure pressures, the enormous challenges that this presents to our public services, but also that crucial need for people who come to the United Kingdom to be able to integrate. And I think that the trajectory that these figures are on is not one that the British people as a whole support. I think that it really frays public consent for immigration wholesale. That really worries me enormously, because we are a society that's benefited immensely from immigration over the years, but it has to be controlled, it has to be managed. I, in government, started pulling the levers that we have on the back of Brexit. There were some good reasons why we had elevated numbers for a period of time once we'd left the EU, for example, responding generously to Ukraine, to Hong Kong, the situation in Afghanistan, but also the need for social care workers on the back of the pandemic. What we saw with the changes that James Cleverly and I introduced was numbers coming down very dramatically month on month.
From a massive high.
I absolutely accept that. And the minute I was appointed to that role as Legal Migration Minister, I got on and did something about it.
But they're already here, Tom Pursglove. I mean, you brought in measures with James Cleverly to stop it after the horses bolted. Those numbers Martin's dug out are huge. They are changing societies, changing communities. You say it's unsustainable. You did it.
I did something about it.
Only after the event. They're all here.
And actually, one thing that I thought was really noteworthy was Rishi in his interview this week making the point that he wished that he'd pulled these levers earlier, and I wish that we'd pulled these levers earlier.
Well, you told voters you would do in all those 5 elections. You didn't do a thing about it.
Well, one thing again on that front is that as members of the European Union, Martin, you and I were in the same place in terms of campaigning to leave the EU, and one of the reasons for that was because I wanted to determine our own destiny when it came to immigration. Well, we could do nothing about EU free movement. We can do something about this.
Well, the phrase was take back control, which patently didn't happen. And this isn't taking back control. It's a situation that's utterly and perhaps irredeemably out of control. It's getting worse. And the problem we have is one of integration. The second set of data is astonishing. 43% of parts of Leicester speak little or no English. Pendle, 37%. Oldham, 36%. And Burnley and Bradford, 33%. The same in Blackburn. Northern towns, once British manufacturing towns now being absolutely dominated by Pakistanis, by Bangladeshis, by Asian community, high Muslim population, 26th percentile in lots of these areas. And what we have there is the perfect areas for not multiculturalism, but monoculturalism. Cultures living side by side, not able to speak English or not wanting to speak English. High levels of unemployment benefit, particularly amongst Pakistani women, whose duty in their society is to raise children. This is a situation that cannot carry on. And yet it has to be said, Chris Hope mentioned there, the Conservatives held the door wide open to all these problems.
But we have got the levers because of our time in government. And actually, the referendum allowed us to do that.
Well, the only levers that were pulled was the trapdoor that sent the Tories through the floor. You got hammered because you failed to grasp the nettle on any of this.
I don't doubt that for a moment. And, you know, I felt that in my old constituency. I felt that in many of the conversations that I was having. And it's why I wanted to do something about it. But I always said that you would likely need to go much further. And so things like looking again at the graduate route, looking at very robust caps on legal migration annually. That's what we're able to do now, because you can look at what skills you need in the economy year to year and do that. Things like a comprehensive labour market strategy. I was a minister in the DWP for a while. I would love us to do more to look at what we can do to join up jobs and skills and the needs of our businesses, because what you shouldn't be doing is relying on foreign labour in the first instance. That's not all right. The political challenge in all of this, and I experienced this, and ministers will no doubt experience this again, is the discipline that is required across government to do this. It's easy for ministers to pay lip service to we want to bring numbers down, but when it comes to their pet sector or the sort of niche area in their portfolio, maintaining that discipline is hard.
Who's in control of it? So the Treasury say more migrants might boost our GDP, but not per capita, but overall GDP. But then it's hard to keep people off benefits. Then we'll see more benefits, surely. But I mean, it's a concern. I think with the efforts by Kane Bay not to say you must work by here to be here twice as long to qualify for citizenship is an attempt at clearing up this mess.
I agree. I mean, I think actually Kemi's right on this. This is one of the things I wanted to look at. The election got in the way. We couldn't move that forward. I would be much more stringent on English language requirements. I just don't think that it's conducive not being able to speak the language. It's not right in workplaces. That presents safety issues, integration in communities. But also to earn the right to be able to stay in the United Kingdom long term, you should be a fully functioning member of the community. I
think a lot of people watching the show will agree. Tom Pursglove, thank you for coming in. Thank you for your candour. It's much appreciated.
Now, a report from the Centre for Migration Control claims that first-generation migrants could make up 25% of the UK population as soon as 2035.
Yes, the report also claims that Britain's overall population will exceed 73 million in just over a decade, with many arguing such a high rate of immigration will make integration nearly impossible.
But are they correct, or should we see more people as more business, more commerce, more growth? Well, to answer that question, we're joined by the former Conservative MEP, David Campbell-Bannerman. David, the Centre for Migration Control has put forward some pretty stark numbers. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's totally shocking and totally unacceptable. At least these are forecasts, as you say, 10 years' time, and we can head this off through proper border control. But it's a border emergency, isn't it? I mean, who's voted for this? It's totally out of control. I think the system is out of control. It's not so much the political parties, it's this sort of machine underneath of vested interests, universities and businesses wanting cheap labour and all of these pressures being put on the system, and it's not responding to the popular will.
No, and I mean, it's been pointed out many a time, including from the Office for Budget Responsibility, how in terms of the economic benefit, it really depends on the type of migrant who comes to this country. And unfortunately, mass low-skilled immigration is actually costing this country quite a bit, because people on low wages will take more out of the economy, out of the state, out of taxpayers' money than they will put in over the course of their life. And how do we afford that?
Well, you're quite right, Emily. I mean, it's a very fair question. I mean, I think the starting point is that Treasury regards all immigration as a benefit, as an economic benefit. Well, it isn't, as you rightly say. I mean, the costs it brings long term. I mean, A lot of people coming in because they're on low wages are in need of benefits and housing, and they impose huge pressures on public services. So look, why don't we get our own people back to work? Why don't we tackle the welfare system? Why don't we train more in proper skills that we're short of, like plumbing, for example? I mean, the whole system has to get sorted out. It's not just the immigration issue, the border issue, about skills and training and a sensible policy in education.
Yeah, and also, I'm sorry, go on, Tom.
Well, I was going to say, I think that the government might say here that we are seeing, on recent data, a pretty sharp fall in migration. I mean, not from anything that this current government's done, but they're benefiting, if you see it as a benefit, from the changes that Robert Jenrick brought in when he was immigration minister. We should see perhaps even a halving of the level of migration from 1 year to the next. We're starting to see that on student visas, on dependents. We're starting to see these numbers really, really fall. We won't know the full picture until the latest statistics are out officially, but all the indications we have is that actually migration is going to be a lot lower this year than the last.
Yeah, well, you're right to credit Robert Jenrick, who made one of the biggest cuts ever in legal migration. And, legal migration is hundreds of thousands. Illegal, like the boat people, is 50,000 maybe, which is a big problem. But legal migration is a problem too, and that is in the remit of the government. We don't have the excuse to blame the EU anymore. It's now the UK government that can control those numbers, and that's a great plus. I think you're right. You earlier touched on integration. I mean, the problem is if you have 25% of your population who are first generation migrants or immigrants, I prefer to call. There's a huge, they can't integrate properly. You have to have numbers controlled so that they can integrate. And we all want to see good people come into this country and to integrate. But the scale of this would just, will create ghettos, and it will break up Britain. And it is very, very serious.
Yeah, and we already have that. And, you have to have something to integrate into, don't you? And if minorities are just integrating into minorities, the minority that they come from, then you're not integrating into a broader whole, are you? David Campbell-Bannerman, thank you very much indeed, former Conservative MEP. Great to chat.
Well, it's the final week now to see